Hey everybody, and welcome to the Double Stuff Podcast, where we're double the host, double the topics, double the fun. I'm Alan.
I'm Dan.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Charity.
And we're getting back to our topics, and so let me reach into the bowl to figure out what our topics are going to be.
Our big bowl.
Dan,
here.
do you want to pick them out?
Sure, here we go. So the first one, we're going to go down to the farm.
I love farms for a day.
And then our second topic that gets tied into is rents. Parents.
Oh,
I was like,
I'm one of
A
those.
pair of rents.
All right, so starting off with the farm, let's just go off with what your first pick was. Has anybody ever lived or worked on a farm?
E-I-E-I-O.
Well, it depends on what you mean.
Okay.
So, what do you mean, like a
Not what
working...
you're growing in the closet, Dan.
Well, we're not talking about that.
Don't talk about
Wait, it depends on if you mean like an actual working farm,
Yeah.
right? Or a farm
be-
that, you know,
could
just
be
like a house out in the
dairy.
country.
Yeah, it could
right?
be. Yeah, okay.
Because like we own a farm. We own
wow. I didn't know
my,
that
my
about you.
parents do. So my
Yeah,
parents own my wife's father's farm.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I
So
remember
after
that
he
one.
passed away and everything like that, and so they actually own it now. So it's not a working farm that doesn't like produce anything, but it's a house and a barn and garage and there's
At one
land.
point,
and
what was being farmed?
I have no idea. It's
Oh,
been
wow.
it was in my wife's family since like the mid or early 1800s or late 1800s.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
So it's been around a long time.
Wow, nice.
And it's a nice farm. It's got a good amount of land, but we go out there for activities and barbecue and like all
Okay.
sorts of stuff like that. But it's
Have you ever done summer jobs at a
I
farm?
didn't. So I had
Okay.
a bunch of friends who did, and my father's done that. Like he's gone out and like drove the combines and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. I've thought about it in the past, but I always did like I was a lifeguard,
Uh-huh.
so I was doing that the whole like during harvest season. So I never actually had the opportunity to do that, or I
Yeah.
had the opportunity, but I never took it. Basically,
Yeah. And that was a big deal for a lot of people that were from previous generations, where if you were working on a harvest crew, you would actually go travel up the Midwest, as things were being harvested.
Oh yeah.
And then, hitchhike your way up and hitchhike your way back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been on a few farms, but
Okay.
never actually farmed anything.
Okay.
Which, if you know me, that's not a surprise.
Yeah. I'm not too much of a
I
farmer.
can at least see you like chewing on a piece of hay, looking out at your dome and be like, "Yep, I can feel it in my bones.
It's
We're gonna
an
get some
honest
rain."
Why'd
Yeah.
you change the sound of his voice into this creepy old man?
Feel it in my bones.
That's what it sounds like when I put a piece of straw in my mouth.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
See, yeah.
Your personality changes.
See, I was right.
Yeah. Oh, so you guys have both been, as in you guys, the Harmon sisters.
Yes.
So you've lived in Kansas, you've lived in Indiana. Do you guys have any connection to farming at all?
I remember going on a field trip, maybe first or second grade,
Connor Prairie.
where we saw like being on a farm. But
Yeah.
like the closest I've ever been to working on a farm was at college. So College of the Ozarks has a dairy farm.
Oh.
And so we shot a video out there. So I was working,
Okay.
making a video, and we were on the farm, but I
Right.
didn't like farm anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There was cows in my
Sure.
footage.
There's cows in the shot, therefore.
And that was work. I had to edit that video.
Yeah.
That was work.
I know, yeah. So talking about Connor Prairie, because Connor Prairie in Indiana, I don't know, it might still be around. We haven't visited there since
I
we
think
moved.
it is because we were looking it up one time.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like sort of like Old Town.
It's like
Or
like
Cowtown.
It's like a living history kind of place. So it kind of shows farmland in Indiana, like at the turn of the century or late 1800s. So yeah, so we got to see them milk a cow, churn butter, do pottery. Sell candles, so they kind of had everybody was dressed up in the garb and everything.
Yeah.
So like I said, I've seen it from afar as a third party, be like, oh, I know what a cow looks like, and I know how to churn butter, because we actually did churn butter and use the ice cream maker, so that was kind of cool. But
Cool for a day.
for a day, yeah, it wasn't like this is going to be your job now.
Is educational.
It's
I think that's-
educational purposes.
I think that's my feeling as well. I've visited farms. I've both on field trips as a child myself, and then taking my children to working farms. And for me, it's always to gather an appreciation for what ends up in the Dillon's aisle that I go and farm.
Yeah.
You go forage. You forage from Dylan.
That's right. That's right. But as far as farming, it doesn't instill a need for me to want to grow things. I think that for the people that have invested their time and energies
kudos to
into,
them.
yeah, and I need that and I appreciate that, but it's always just an appreciation. It's never an, oh, that's an occupation that I can do and that I would love to do.
Yeah.
Now there is a little bit of farm life that I got to experience as a young man in driving like heavy machinery and things like that, which was a lot of fun. And being in the cab of a tractor for a day and just being alone with my thoughts and listening to the radio. We didn't have smartphones at that time. Yeah. So it was listening to talk radio at the time.
Yep.
It was fun, but it wasn't something that I knew that I could do this every day for the rest of my life.
Right.
You know?
I think
that's a
the
lot of
smell
work.
would put me off, just the smell of animals. And like, I
animals.
love animals, but like, I don't want to smell poop every day. I don't
up
want to
after
clean up
them.
after them.
Yeah.
You know, and a chicken coop smells. Bleh.
I worked the
gross.
farm area at the Sedgwick County Zoo when I volunteered there, which is just all the area behind the African section. So it was like just like all the zebras and everything like that. And my job was to go in there on Sundays and muck it out.
Oh man.
I didn't do that very long. I'll tell you, the worst part was there was like this hippo thing. I don't even remember what it was, but it had like a pool that it was in, and it would just relieve itself in the pool like all night or all week or whatever. And you had to drain it, so you had to get like a rod. You had to reach into it and hook the plunger, and then like turn it, and then like pull it up.
And the smell.
I feared dropping that rod into the water. Because if you drop the rod into the
gotta
water,
get it.
You gotta go
you
get
gotta
it.
get it.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Lord.
gosh!
I
Did you
never
ever drop it?
I didn't. I came close though. Oh, there was one time I fumbled it and I grabbed it. And I was just like, nope.
Put your life on the line for that
Yeah,
rod.
I would have walked out.
there wasn't a lanyard that you could like hook to your. See, that would be.
No, that would have been smart.
That would have been smart.
That would have been real smart.
You gotta turn on your
Those, of course, you get
engineering.
like pulled in because it was kind of a heavy one. Anyway,
No,
that was like
he's a-
closely to the farm.
Yeah,
and it
he's
was
a
gross.
he's a volunteer. That means he's expendable.
Yeah.
So they would have had a staff and they would have had like the right materials.
I
and
would imagine
equipment.
by now they probably have something that has
Hopefully, this
replaced
was
that
like,
old-fashioned.
This was like 4 years ago, so it wasn't like super
okay.
long ago.
I was thinking
so-
like high school Dan.
Yeah,
and,
no, it wasn't that. It was here at the Sedgwick County Zoo. I was interested. So I worked
Okay.
with the chimpanzees and I mucked out the farm. And,
We need
both
to
of
tag
those
the
were
Sedgwick
gross.
County Zoo and get an update on this rod
We
for the
definitely-
hippo pool.
Well, they've updated the place now, so
Yeah,
maybe they have
that's just
updated
been-
the.
Now they've got 2 rods.
But yeah, that's my farm mucking story. My dad was a what do you call it? When he was younger, he was a horseshoer or
he's
Blacksmith.
not a blacksmith.
This shows how much we know about
He was-
farm
saddle.
life.
He worked with horses.
He would put the horseshoes on.
He would
the
put the
horses?
horseshoes on the horses.
A fitter?
There's a
shoe
word
fitter?
for it. And
There's
I
a
never
word.
remember
I don't
what it
know,
is.
but
We need
there-
more farm people
I
in our
kind of know what
lives.
you're
Let's see what
talking
Mr.
about.
Google
There's
has. What's Mr.
there was
Google?
farrier or something like
well,
that.
there's a really interesting genre of YouTube videos, and I don't know if
I've
it's
seen
quite
those.
made it into a show where they have somebody that's their profession, and they go around and they not only do they clean off hooves, but they also clean out like stones and all kinds
Yeah.
of things that can get in there.
A
to the
farrier, Farrier.
That's what it is. A farrier. Yep.
okay, there you go.
But it's usually specifically to a blacksmith. So I guess you're partially right. It's just a
Yeah.
Close enough.
Partially.
Yeah.
Thanks. I was 100% correct.
It's just funny since my father grew up in Long Island,
Yeah.
right? Not necessarily horse country,
Yeah.
right, that you think of, but then he went to equestrian school,
Right.
and became a professional
Well,
farrier
and-
for a short time. I don't know if he ever did as a job, but
It's completely plausible. I mean, the idea that horses out of our civilizations and society is relatively new.
yeah,
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you go millennia back, and horses are a part of everything.
right.
Oh, yeah.
right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, now it's just a nice pastime, but that was our transportation and hauling things and stuff. You know, one thing about a farm that I've never done, but I've always been curious about, is milking a cow. I've always been curious of milking
You've
a cow.
milked a cow?
No, I've not.
Oh.
You can live a
I
long
would've-
time and not know that.
No,
I would have remembered.
No, because you were talking about Connor Prairie. They had you practice with the rubber glove with the holes in it.
I
to
never
look like the udder, so
This
you
took a
squeeze.
turn. I don't
It's like,
actually.
okay.
No, I personally don't remember ever milking an actual cow.
Okay.
We I know that's a weird way to speak.
If any of our listeners have a cow that Sarah can milk, let Sarah come over.
Apparently, it's something that's on her bucket list. So,
Ever since I was 6 years old, it's a weird thing.
Help Sarah fulfill her lifelong dream. Any farmers in our audience, please contact Double Stuff Podcast.
Oh my god. So yeah, I've always been kind of farm adjacent, but I'm a city boy.
Yeah, it sounds like that's kind of where all of
All of
us
us
are.
are.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and our parents didn't push us into that direction, which is our second topic, as far as our parents. Now, we had talked a little bit about your parent having a connection to the first topic, but parents themselves, I'm the only one that is a parent of a human being.
Actually, two.
Two of them.
Two.
Dude.
There was another one somewhere, right?
So I don't want to sit back and like take all of this conversation, but as that topic came out, does this jump to any other?
Well, I was gonna say, like, out of our parents, like, who do you take the most after, like in terms of personality, or who do you look the most like? I know I look the most like my dad. I'm basically my dad with pink braids. So in terms of personality and how I look, I think it's mainly the Harmon side. I think I get my dramatics from the Jackson side. But
and if any of our aunts are listening to this,
I mean, being dramatic, I mean, that's just showing a more emotional side. So I get the more emotional side from the Jackson side, and I get my sense of humor and maybe the way I interact with people. That's a Harmon thing. 'Cause I used to see my dad do that all the time. So what about you? Who do you take more after? Mom, dad,
I take a little bit of both from my parents, I believe. I certainly look like my father. I don't put a lot of thought into what I take from each one of them. I see them as one unit. I mean, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a house where my parents were intact. They're still together. They're happily married, and that's obviously hugely beneficial for most people. And for me, I take a lot of pride in that, and I want to give my children that as well. Fortunately, I don't have to work hard about it because I'm happily married myself. So.
Oh, good.
So are your parenting styles sort of similar to what your parents?
Okay.
Oh, here
now
we go.
this
Here we
is
go.
where it can get different.
Like you said, he's the only one with children, so he's the only one who can actually say what.
I will say this, and I know that as a parent, you get the ability to raise your children how you would see fit. Of course, it's not trying to figure it out as one, and I know that it was painful for my parents once we started having children to have our own ideas, and I feel like we might have caused some friction in the sense of we know what we're doing better than our parents know what they're doing, and I hope that I can realize that too once my children start having children, that they might want to do things differently. And one of the things that I do have as a parenting style that my parents did not have, they had it in their own way, but at least in my house there is no knowledge that's off limits. That we put a huge price on information and knowledge, and if you want to explore it, you can. Now, it's done in a safe way, and it's done in an open way. There's no secrets as far as what are you interested in, what are you looking for, what would you like to read. Very rarely do I ever say no to anything. Case in point, coming up on Halloween this year, the girls wanted to watch some more scary movies. Now, I didn't get to watch scary movies ever, and one of the things
we didn't either.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to do was to let Layla and Audrey know we can watch scary movies. When it gets too scary, you just stop watching. It's just that simple. You don't have to finish it. And so we watched some scary movies, and it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun, and they didn't have nightmares, and the devil didn't come into them. You know, all the things that was pumped into my head, you know. So I'm happy to say that I have 2 healthy young women that are not women yet, young ladies that are growing up, and they I'm trying to eliminate a lot of the fears that I grew up with that were I understand why they were put onto me. I don't feel the need to put them onto my children.
Gotcha.
That may be why they're so creative, because you do have that,
it could be
like open knowledge, like, you know, you can explore, you can be creative, you can do different things, and that's probably why they are so artistic.
Right.
And obviously your wife had a big hand in that
right.
too.
Yeah. What about you, Dan? Do you still have this stuff in your cats?
Yeah, but they don't listen. They're terrible.
Just like a kid.
They're like little teenagers.
That's right.
Who do you take after in your family?
Well, look-wise, I take after mostly my father, except for my hair. That comes from like my great-grandfather. Nobody else in my family has hair like mine.
Like that reddish color?
curly.
Yeah, just the reddish color, and also curly and like the volume. And then I think temperament-wise, probably my mother most. Although, you know, work ethic probably from my father, but that was more like instilled than anything else. So I'm kind of an oddball though, because I'm like very much a nerd, and neither of my parents were nerdy about anything.
There's always at least one somewhere in the family.
Yeah. So, but that's really what I take after.
But you have a big heart. You're very compassionate, and I'm sure that reflects from your
I think
parents as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm in the same boat. You know, my parents are still together, and you know, and everything like that. So that's good.
Yeah, that's what about you, Charity? Seeing as how we have.
I know. I was like, our answer is going to be the same. Okay, so. Okay, growing up, as far as like who I look like, I would get both. I remember we've talked about this before. When my little sister was born, everyone would say Christy looked like my mom, Sarah looked like my dad, and then I would get a toss up of, like 50% would say I look like my mom, and then I had some people that say I didn't look like either of my parents, which is not something you want to hear as like an 8-year-old, like, you know, oh, you were adopted, you know, like surprise.
Yeah.
I used to think that when Charity was little, she was like, she don't look nothing like us.
I still think I'm a good hybrid. Like when we, wow, thanks, Sarah.
It's because when Charity, it's because it's going to sound weird. When Charity was born, her eyes were more slanted.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, I think you brought the wrong baby home.
Oh my gosh.
And so, hey, this is from a 3-year-old standpoint. I'm like, I think you need to go back. Make sure.
Do you still have your receipt?
You still got the receipt?
I would exchange this.
So I was like, well, I guess we're stuck with this one.
Not a straight return, just an exchange.
It's like, no, she's still just fresh out the box. Just put her
give us a black baby this time.
Well, I remember in a previous episode I was talking about when she was born, she was kind of jaundiced, and so I was like,
wow. I had a great start to my life.
Oh my.
Anyway, okay, so I think I'm still a good. Most people probably say I look more like my dad, but like the times that we've been
with our mom's
with
side.
our mom's side, I think I still blend in. So maybe I'm more a chameleon. Harmon's side, Jackson's side, I look related somehow.
Yeah, I think the older we've gotten, the more at least the older I've gotten, the more I'm starting to look like my mom for some reason, or at least the Jackson side of the family. I never saw that until my 20s, I think. And then apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently I have my grandmother's hands.
No, you do.
It's, you know, you're like,
arthritis?
Oh, you got your, no.
Terrible.
Ba-dum-bum.
That's terrible.
No, but like you always hear people like, "Oh, you got your dad's eyes, you got your mom's nose," but they were like, "You got your grandmother's hands." And I never noticed. I looked at her one day and I was like, "Oh my gosh, her hands are on my hands."
No, it was at our cousin's wedding because they had like a little tea party thing, and they both reached for a teacup, and it was like,
and we both had like
identical hands.
I was like, I'd never seen like a duplicate of my hand before. It was the weirdest thing, but I do feel like the older I'm getting, I'm starting to pick up mannerisms that I guess I've seen my parents do throughout their lives, and it wasn't like, when I get older, I'm going to do this. But it's just something you do.
Okay.
It just becomes a part of you, and you start doing certain hand gestures, or you say certain things.
That's more of our father.
That's
ones you just did was more of our father.
I'm already doing it now.
I know. I heard this at from a neighbor's son when I was out in California, and he came up to me one day. He was a teenager, and he was like, "I know what your dad cuss word is." And I was like, what are you talking about, kid? Beat it.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah. And he was like, you always say Jiminy Christmas. And I was like, what? And he goes, that's your dad cuss word. And I didn't think about that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my dad's cuss word too. Jiminy Christmas for everything.
I don't think I've ever heard you say that.
Yeah,
you actually say that?
Jiminy Christmas, Cherry. Come on.
Okay, now that's one.
He said that in some early podcast episodes.
I try to keep my conversations polite.
Oh yeah.
For us,
exercise etiquette.
For us, it's eating cheese. Apparently, my dad. I like eating cheese by the block. My dad still does sometimes. I think he said his dad did it, and then his grandfather did it. So there's at least 3 generations of Harmons that eat cheese.
Is that why I've got an issue with dairy now? Can't have dairy anymore. Thanks, Grandpa.
Jiminy Christmas. Well, that was a great podcast where we explored a lot. You learned a lot about us. And if you would like to share anything with us about your parents, or if you lived on a farm or a combination thereof, Sarah will tell you where you can leave those comments.
Yeah. Take a listen to all of our episodes. They're at doublestuffpod.com. Our most recent episodes are on all the different podcast platforms. Of course, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Double Stuff Podcast, and on Twitter at Double Stuff P, and that's the letter P.
Christmas.